Yo, what's going on, guys? Let's get to work and let's take a look at some stuff. We're gonna do a little evening update here. Break down what we're looking at for the next couple sessions, I suppose, now that the week's started. Really happy with the read overall today. Ideally, right, the scenario to coming in today was that we kind of danced around and actually baited in a little bit more. But when you look under the hood, that's kind of, what occurred, already that pre-wedge pop type action where you end up defending these levels right here. Like SMH just came down and defended its bull gap right there. SNDK came down and defended its bull gap, down here from right last week Thursday. MBIS wasn't able to come down and touch that bull gap. It was a little bit stronger. Same thing with BE. Intel, same thing, into the bull gap. Micron, you guessed it, bull gap right there. And then all this while, well, QQQ is, making, higher lows for a fourth day and higher highs for a fourth day following the Fed. Amazon was able to continue its earnings. Microsoft was able to continue its earnings for the third day. You got Palantir gapping up about $20 right now in the after hours post earnings. I can't remember what else was notable on earnings. Oh, BLZE, right? Like it's a fine earnings move. Back here, big huge move up. Pulls back in a little bit deeper than you'd like to see, but nice quick remount when the market's acting well, and now it's back at highs. I mean, this weekly was looking extremely attractive. Into the end of last week. I mean, you've got this weekly undercut right here and reclaim while the QQQ is kind of going lower and hammering. So there's just some really attractive things underneath the hood. Do things pop up here and end up getting rejected and moving lower. Most likely if that occurs, these end up like overshooting. Some really big spots. Wouldn't probably be interested in anything like that until 590s, on SMH to see how that reacts, or even plus 600. But at that point, hopefully there's attractive setups underneath the hood to where if it does sweep and fail, it is what it is. That would be obviously not cool. But that's probably the one scenario that would be challenging, right? And then you come down and then you chop back around to whatever. That's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. But near term right now, I was able to get into MBIS with ManRev at 180, 182.30 on this, basically as you reclaimed previous day low, and then was able to get Micron at 784. Right, yeah, 784. Right, basically as undercut into this gap right here. Oops, I got the wrong intraday over here. Right as you cut into this gap and started kind of curling back up intraday, got in this at 784. Saw about $10 of risk, $14 of risk to low a day. And yeah, took my shot. Working out pretty well so far. Um, Couple that I'm a little bit mad. I highlighted these in my channel. Like, okay, Dell's a buy here, as you're going red to green through 405, and then again, as we're kind of pulling back at about 415, I end up putting in a limit order down here at about at 410 and 412 into the afternoon. Um, to get a lot of a lot, like not a lot, but a chunk of shares at 412 and 410 here, because I'm like, okay, like I like how it's going. My stop is, I'm getting good feedback on MBIS, feedback on Micron, and wanted to take this, but ended up not getting it, which pretty upset about, because let's be honest, this probably should have been the first focus. Instead, I was looking at um yeah, I was just looking at a number of things. I was looking at SNDK's reaction, right? I was still kind of in that mindset of trying to get, the snapback on RAM and Koru. So I just have been tracking, Micron, SNDK, and these stocks pretty closely. And that's kind of where my focus was, versus, Dell and, AMD. which kind of showed that relative strength pretty notably. Um, but I don't know. I was more attracted to the other ones, which is interesting. Even BE was more attracted to down here because I'm really looking at this broadly, right? If in terms of a cycle of price action, you got this failed breakdown. Now, I mean, we have to operate as if this is a failed breakdown until these two levels break essentially, or these three levels are kind of our line in the sand to trade against now. But as long as we're not rejecting any of these levels from underneath, we're kind of good to just pay attention to the individual names here for a little bit. I know we haven't got a follow through yet, right? Day three after lows. Um, and the best thing would, be to, dance around here to put in a higher low. I think we're more likely to push above up into the 50-day to see if there's still some sellers up here, which there will be first. But anyways, that's enough of that stuff. If we end up getting a couple tight days, we'll be able to fully look at some individual names. But for now, we still have to keep a side eye on both. Really like the way that, stocks like Cypher, I mean, this was really quick to go red to green, back above the 50-day moving average weekly chart. I could see this being a little bit of a base. Hut, same thing. Back above, right into the 50 days, up above the 50-day and after hours. This looks pretty solid. One thing I want to mention on this, you guys know how we talk about relative strength and anchoring to certain spots, right? The relative strength being three pillars. Number one, right? Simply the relative strength line versus the, index that it's trading against, the S&P or the NASDAQ. And then number two is relationship to moving averages during corrections, right? The most obvious example is Hood against the 200-day moving average back here, right? It was pointing to the 200-day moving average, while the QQQ was about 8% below the 200-day moving average, okay? And then you've got the third example, which Hut right here is anchored to notable price levels, okay? So you can see this made its low on 717, and then here it made a higher low on 729. And on the right-hand side here, I'm going to pull up QQQ, and look what we have here. We've got, let me just clean up my chart a little bit. We've got a low on 717 and then a lower low. So that's a pretty notable form of relative strength here. We've also got this bull gap that's still left open. One of the most striking examples of a longer period gap being opened recently is this AMD back here, that ended up not just dancing around after it got this big open AI news while the market was chopping around from October to March. And then once the market shored up, this thing went from 180 right to 600. Okay. So anyways, just kind of a little subtlety that, I think are important to notice. So when I was going through scans this weekend, I was looking for, things that could bounce significantly to their 50-day moving average, the classic stocks that are notable with the market. And then, things against the 717 and this low right here, and then how they're trading in relationship to the gap and kind of marking out that level on HUD. It was right at $100. DOCN, this is another one that I'm tracking, but I really want to see this get some sideways underneath this 20 May to pop through and then get a higher low. I still think this is going higher. I'm excited for Fastly's earnings, but I think these, I think some of these companies are going to continue to be extremely notable and going to continue to have some kick-ass earnings. Oscar, obviously in the healthcare space, getting extremely tight up here at highs against $30. I think this is an attractive look. Really nice off the 50-day, and the support around 28 bucks. This is a good look. The weeklies, probably a little bit extended. That's why I like it off that 50-day right there. You can see it on the weekly. That's much more attractive, but maybe this needs a little bit more time, but it's one that I'm for sure watching still. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, DELL. Again, I'm gonna get into some better ones here in a minute, but I think this is worth watching as well. We've been talking about this for a few weeks. After his big earnings move, is a sick base. And nice tight earnings pattern, a pattern post earnings or post news or whatever that was. Um, and then APPS still tracking this one, after its big earnings gap up like BLZE. These kind of remind me of like Fastly and Palantir, the way that they traded from December to February, which I think is notable. Fastly, same thing from February up until April here. So I think it's worthy to watch these. Remember, I've got those three baskets of stocks: relative strength, leadership names, emerging setups and patterns, emerging setups, patterns, and themes, and then ERs and PRs, right? Earnings releases and press releases. And I think those three technical baskets can dominate your watch list. I thought the watch list was trash towards the end of the week last week. All of a sudden today, there's stuff to look at. I was able to get two positions on today quickly into cushion, up 20% on MBIS shares and up 7% on Micron shares. Um, what else do I want to mention in terms of focus? Inside day tomorrow would be fucking awesome. Part of my language. And then, then I think he just kind of, oh, HPE, was another one. You know, I'd already had NBIS and Micron, and I was like, ooh, this is looking nice through $47 through previous day low here. By the way, this is all you need as a setup for days like today. Undercut previous day low on a day that has a potential to be a buy day. Undercut previous day low, you reclaim, you put in a low, and then you put your stop at low day and you get your entry anywhere. Your entry doesn't matter. It could be 47.50, it could be up here at 48.50, or it could be on the reclaim of low of day. All that matters is the low, the low, the low. Your stop. Where's my stop? Where is this trade invalidated? Because it can dance around that for a while. Same thing with D-Dog, big lower wick, take out previous day high. Do you need to wait till previous day high, or can you buy it here, 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 right? Because all that matters is your stop. Same thing with this candle on Snowflake. Back here, I've already got it circled because we've been going through this lesson. Drifting in, drifting in. All of a sudden, you get an oops reversal at the 20 MA, which, well, how do you know that that's the buy day? Well, you don't. Because I tried this about two or three different times right there, and then all of a sudden you actually get a true oops reversal at the 20 May. You break previous day high, and then it's actually just been trending ever since, never closing below the 20 May. So realistically, people should have positions in Snowflake still. Crowd, quite similar. This actually pulled back a little bit deeper here to the 50 SMA, but a day like this right there, undercut the 50, presence of buyers, area to risk against. Here's your stop. Even the same thing. Do you need to wait for the remount? What's so important about 190 when you have a clear area to risk against right here in the presence of buyers, hammer candle, lower wick at a key spot? Well, you could have tried it right here. You eventually would have been stopped, but you would have gotten, about a 15% return in a few days, and then stop break even. So, in reality, the market does a good job and individual stocks do a good job of defining where their stops are. It's just your job to recognize it in real time and being willing to put on the risk. Because in reality, I think right now you could easily have anywhere from 40 to 80% exposure just after today, with zero risk, with zero risk. By that, I mean, if you executed properly on DELL at 400 or even at about 410 to 412 on the remount here, stop break even right now. You could even have traded Soxel right here. I'd probably say you still have your risk on the table there. But I got Micron at 780 and my stop is break even. My stop is actually going to be in profit. I will let this actually come all the way back on me into 780, but we'll see how the market's acting at the time. MBIS, zero risk from 182, the reclaim a low a day. Stops not going to be 182, not going to let it come back all the way 20% on me. But again, so that's, you know, and then Snowflake could easily still be in this. D-Dog could easily still be in this. Crowd could easily still be in this. HPE could be in this. And net, right? A lot of good ones. ANET, I think, was really attractive too. Um, NTAP's a nice one. Da, 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 da. Still watching this RBRK. It hasn't acted super great. A little disappointed in it. so far. Oh my gosh, CBRS. Of course, Bracco had a sick fucking entry on this at 192 this morning, 192.50. Let's look at the 30-minute chart here. But this is just classic go signal type of action. You look at the daily here, you've got higher low, higher low, higher low. What does that remind you of? Does that remind you of any chart? Well, I'll bring one up here. ARM, as the market's correcting, making lower lows, lower lows, lower lows. We've got higher low, higher low, higher low. And guess what? This is in March right here. That's when the market bottomed. Higher low, higher low, higher low. Now, CBRS is not as remarkable, but it's still some higher lows. Maybe we put in more higher lows. Maybe the market keeps correcting. Who knows, right? But this is a big bullish engulfing candle. There's an IPO out of market corrections. You get notable IPO stocks. Back before, there was CoreWeave coming out of coming out of the tariff correction here in 2025. That was a lot more intense, I will say. In A Lab or 2024, we had A Lab here. Sorry, that was 2025 as well. No, I traded it right here in September 2024 on that September move. Anyway, kind of rambling now. Good action. I think there were some spots to put on risk. A couple inside days would be nice. I don't have as much risk on as I wish I did. I'm glad about the conversation we had on Zoom this morning. I'm glad the scenario that we mapped out for pulling into the bull gap and holding played out. I love an oops reversal. I love an upside reversal. I'll like an inside day tomorrow even better. Over and out. That's what I got for you guys. Peace.